I would love to know what kids today think of this movie, Back to the Future. Not just because we're coming up on the 40th anniversary of that film coming out, but Gen Z had a wildly popular cartoon that was a satire of it. And by the way, if some of you want to feel old, Rick and Morty has been on the air for almost 12 years. And everybody does know this, right? Like Rick and Morty is Doc and Marty. But the thing that show was making fun of is something that was incredibly common in movies in the 80s to the point that people my age don't even notice it, which is the idea of the wacky mad scientist inventor. Most movies from this era seem to have that character, and Gremlins the dad was an inventor. If you watched movies back then, you would get the sense that that was common for people to make technology in their garages that was more advanced than what you could get on the shelf. It's not even treated as a plot point that the Ghostbusters know how to make nuclear-powered ghost-catching machines and that they can make them with just the stuff they have around the house. And obviously a time machine is not a real thing that exists, but the way it's powered in the film is with a tiny nuclear reactor that he just built himself in his garage. And that part of it is absolutely treated as something a guy could do on his own if he was smart enough. Likewise, if you watch the Batman film from 1989, the fact that he's able to build all of his own gadgets on his own is not treated as something that needs to be explained. Because everybody in that universe can do it. The villains are all inventors. They have gadgets that they built themselves. In the first sequel, the Penguin is depicted as living in the sewer and still able to build custom gear for his penguins. In kids' movies, it was routine to have a child who was an inventor who had tons of gadgets around the house. And this was such a key part of the cultural mythology I grew up with. The idea that great inventions are made by one person in their home. I was told in school that one day Thomas Edison just came up with the light bulb from scratch. And it's interesting to see how newer adaptations acknowledge that this doesn't make sense. When they rebooted Batman with Christian Bale, they made it so that he was getting all of his equipment through his company. And Rick, in addition to being a cartoon character, is essentially magic. He's a superhero who can just grab items from other dimensions through his magic portal. Because even the famous old-timey inventors didn't just come up with stuff out of thin air. They were always part of a scene and were always iterating on other people's ideas and designs. There were engineers all over the world trying to solve the same problems with flight, and also these guys had a factory where they could fabricate parts. But the lone genius inventor who can just make stuff on his own is such a cool thing to aspire to. And I liked believing that the world was full of these geniuses toiling away in their garages and secret labs. Whereas that equivalent guy today would be making smartphone apps.